Hello, hello. Let me know, please, if you can hear me. Let me know if you can see me. Sorry for the inconvenience. We just have some technical issues. I hope everything should work now. And today we'll talk about the serverless and especially about the Lambda functions and API gateway, which would be necessary for us to make the task number 3. We will wait for a couple more minutes because of this technical issue. So, all of you, not all of us, may find the link to join. Okay, there's already some activities in the chat. So, I think maybe one more minute and we'll proceed with the brief introduction about what serverless is. Because actually, yesterday there was a workshop from Tazik, is the a very professional AWS engineer, and he provided the workshop about how Lambda works and how to deploy Lambda with Amplify, which is also the resource from AWS. So I can't say much more than him because he's much more better professional than me. So this is why I would try to briefly introduce you about now for whom of you who not participated in yesterday's workshop. I'll briefly introduce you about what Lambda and API Gateway is and what serverless is at the AWS. So let's move on. So, as usual, there is the models from our course, and today we will talk about the third one, which is serverless API. And especially we will talk about Lambda, about API Gateway, about processing of its resources, and I hope we would spend much more time to talk about the hands-on tasks, so you would have a chance to ask questions, anything related to the topic. And I will try to show you what is expected in this task. So what should you commit as a result of this task? So first of all, serverless at the AWS is kind of resources which not require for us to provision any resources, any servers at all. So we can just run these resources and they would work. They would work as it is. Sure, in case of we manage them in the correct way. And in the scope of this module, we'll talk about the Lambda functions. So what Lambda functions is? Actually, it's just from our perspective, it would be like the maybe computing time. So we would buy from AWS the computing time, and we would write some code which we want to be run, and we would feed this code to the Lambda functions, and then we would trigger or invoke these Lambda functions. What these Lambda functions would do? They would just start, run in our code, and then they would just disappear. And the best thing about Lambda functions is that we would only pay for the time we would run this code, and sure, for the resources which is necessary to run this code, but usually it's just it's not much. So usually it's just some kind of simple libraries. So you would just import these libraries, run the necessary part of code, and that's it. So Lambda would do especially what you tell her to do. As an example, maybe we would talk about it from the scope of our course. So later on, I would show you the schema of an our application, and for task number 3, and for this module at all. And we will talk where Lambda and how Lambda can help us. So now we should just understand what Lambda is just a function which is running, and she also could take as an input some kind of arguments or some kind of data, for example. And as an input, it may be some kind of return, or there's sound issues. Okay, let me know. I will try to check and maybe fix something if there is an issues. So now we should understand that Lambda is just a function, which is just do something and then disappears. And there is plenty of options how we can trigger this function. So for example, it may be API gateway. So usually Lambda function is just a function which we can invoke, which we can run, but we should have some special policies to do it. So from the AWS perspective, it's just a piece of code which is stored somewhere in the AWS. And if everyone could run it, so we would pay for every of these run. So that's why AWS made it possible to run these special policies with special, let's say, token or a necessary authentication to run this function. But from quite the best way and more native way for running these Lambda functions is API gateway, which actually solves the authentication, authorization issues with sound as well. Okay, let me maybe try to switch my in.
Okay, how's it going now? Let me know if it's better or not. And I would proceed. Oh, it's not okay. And let me try.
A special magic option. Hello, hello? Can you hear me? How's it going? Okay, so I think I would proceed with this one. So, the best native and the most convenient way to run this Lambda functions, it's worse. It's terrible. Okay, got it. So actually, maybe now it would be better. Okay, cool. So, the best most native way about running the Lambda functions is actually via the API gateway, which solves the idea of authentication, authorization, and so on. So we just created this API gateway, saying him, okay, you have this and this and these endpoints, and under these endpoints, you should just invoke the Lambda functions, which would make the deal for us. Another way to work with Lambda functions is to fetch and try to process any events which were made at the AWS. So for example, the creation of the image in S3 bucket, or some notifications in the Amazon SNS, all of these events inside the AWS function may trigger this Lambda function. And for example, if we're talking about S3 and if we are already familiar with this service, so for example, you may upload the picture at the Amazon S3, and in this time, without any of your help or notifications, Lambda function would be triggered, and it should process this image. It may do absolutely anything with this image, what is necessary. And as I remember at yesterday's example, where the example with the feeding the picture which were uploaded to the S3 bucket to the AI. So AI may apply some text to this picture and let us know what exactly this picture is pictured. Okay, let's say like this. Forgot the word. And another option to invoke and work with lambdas is to work with the let's say streams. So first of all, it may talk also with DynamoDB. It would be not stream, but the Lambda function in this case would go to the DynamoDB would take some data or put some data in it, and that's it. And in case of Kinesis, it's a stream, AWS Kinesis, we can just fetch the data which Kinesis stream produces for us, and we can process this data, and then, for example, put it back to the stream, or maybe store in any database or anything else. So actually, just almost everything. So, few words about API Gateway. So actually, API Gateway is just the gateway. What does it mean? Um, it's not usually a good idea to make the Lambda function the endpoint for your application, or just for simply for someone to use it, because it requires a bunch of policies to apply to this function, and it's not quite convenient. So we can manage all of this stuff right inside the API Gateway. Actually, API Gateway created for these kind of tasks. So inside the API Gateway, we can create a bunch of endpoints. So actually, API Gateway would be just a machine which have the URL. And in case you need something, you could just ask this URL. Okay, so give me something in case we just need something, and API Gateway would answer us in case we have enough authorization, or if we didn't manage the authentication authorization for the API Gateway, it would just tell us, so okay, it's not your day, so you should first just kind of log in or provide me with the necessary token to be authenticated. And then this API Gateway, we can create a bunch of endpoints. So API Gateway is endpoint itself, but we can create much more endpoints. So for example, for your web page, as in the task tree, so there's products, there's product slash kind of ID of this product, and so on. Actually, there's so many examples of usage of this API Gateway, but let's focus on the one we would implement in the task number 3. One more necessary point, please. Not sure if I can. Oh, that was a bad idea. I don't know how can I. Okay, please bear with me. I will try to provide you with these links. So I think I have them in here. So this one for Lambda functions, and this one is for API Gateway. It's always a good idea to be familiar with the resources you're using and to understand for what you may be charged. So please take some time, read this data, and make sure you understood all of this. In case you're not, please feel free to ask the questions right here or in the Discord channel, so we would try to help you to understand if you would have any charges, or if you're already charged so forward. We would try to figure out what's happening. And today we will focus on this small part of our application. So actually, maybe it would be such a better idea to show you all of these, or to show you the whole picture. I'm not sure how to do it. Okay, let's do it like this. And then I would share my screen with you like this. Yeah, here we go. So I don't know why, but I can scroll up on down. Hope you see it. Okay, looks like you see it. So after task number 2, we've just created the S3 bucket, which serves the storage purposes. So we are just storing in our static content inside the S3 bucket. And also we implemented the CloudFront, which serves the purpose of caching the data, not to go to the S3 bucket once every time. So we would just fetch all the necessary data right from CloudFront once it's cached. And today, actually, we would almost forget about this part for this task, and we will focus on this one. Where is the API gateway? And where is free? But actually, we would talk only, I think, about these two Lambda functions, which would be used for to get the products list, the list of the products which we are ready to sell. Let's say it like this, and the products one Lambda function to get the products ID. What does it mean? So this function would just take an ID of a necessary product as an input to itself, and in the best case scenario, it should go right to the DynamoDB. But in our case, it will go to the mock data and we'll try to find this ID in this mock data. If it succeeds, it would give us the response. So yeah, here we go. Here is the product you asked me about. If it's not, so for example, if the specified product ID doesn't exist at all, it will say, okay, I'm sorry, but I didn't found it. So where is your 404 error? Here we go. That's it. And for these two Lambda functions, we'll be creating the API gateway, which would serve the gateway for our web page. And actually, it would just try to route all of these responses. So in case of its products, it would route and invoke the get products list Lambda. And if it's if the URL path is product/product ID, it would go straight to the get products by ID. Okay, so if you have any questions on this step, let me know. If it's not, so I think we would proceed with the task itself. Actually, we would talk about the code, and we would talk about the data you should commit to your task number 3. Okay, looks like there's no questions. Let me see if I can detach this window. Looks like it's not. Okay, maybe I have an idea. Okay, looks like I've found out how to do it. Let's move this one to the new window, so I'd have an option to go to the chat and see if you have any questions. Okay, so now let me share my screen once again, and we would move on to the task description. So what do we have in here? First thing you should keep in mind, so we would have 2 repositories right now. So the one would be for the front end. It's the one we already created and we are already using, so it consists of our web page and the CDK deployment we would use to deploy the S3 bucket and CloudFront. And the second repository would serve as the backend purposes. So all the Lambda functions and all of the stuff we would create further would be stored in the backend as the CDK code. Actually, almost the same, actually the same one you're using now in the front end. Don't forget dynamic product representation on the front end side. Okay, we would do it. Or is there already instructions about it? Yeah, let's start from this one. Don't forget to add dynamic product representation on the FE side, at the front end side. So I think it was on the README. Nope. Find the entire architecture. Nope. Okay, here we go. Here it is. So now if you would go to your repository and would take a look at it's not this one. Okay, let me manage it like this. So this one's more necessary right now. Actually, the instruction here is pretty clear about what should we do. But let's take a look at it together. So first of all, previously we had another pointing for this endpoint from the application side. So right here we just created it, so we just built it and uploaded it to the S3 buckets. So what should we do now? First of all, we should change API path to the product. I think before it was like, oh, fortunately it doesn't remember all the changes, but it was something like DFF at the end. So what does this piece of code do? Actually, it just points into the API paths. And here we have mock data, actually, and the same data were for product. But right now, here is the URL for my API gateway. So first of all, let's change the data in here to the product. And as I remember, there was something like /admin or something like this, but yours should look like this. And from the point of the get products, pretty the same. What you're gonna do next? Actually, it's only 2 files you should create, and once you are done, you should run cdk deploy, not cdk deploy, but in case you manage to make the special command for this one, in my case, it's npm run build, when go to the cdk deployment and cdk deploy. So you should just go with all of this one by one. So you should run your build your application and deploy it once again. So with all of the changes you just made. And the next step, you should go to the empty folder. This folder should be located not in the front end folder, not in the front end repository, but it should be located somewhere else. So I think the more convenient way would be to place it alongside with this one. So maybe let me show you how it's done from my end. So maybe it's not the best and not the most convenient way, but as it is. So here is, I have a school application, and there is also already 2 modules. I would create the third one, but for now, all of my front end is located in the to SPA and Node.js. I think it is, yeah. So there is my application, there is my CDK deployment, which you can in which I can use CDK deploy and deploy my application. And this is it for the front end. And what's regarding the backend, I just made the folder which is created the product service. I would create it a bit later, and I just created the product service, and inside this product service folder, I just created CDK init, and actually it's done pretty the same as it done for for the CDK init at the task number 2. It just created all the necessary files to work with. So now I can just start to write the code. Let's take a look on how it should look like. So first of all, inside this folder for you, I think it would be pretty the same for all the languages. You would be provided the folder named with the same name as the parent folder. And inside of this one, you should describe all of the resources you want to deploy. Let's start from the Lambda functions. So first of all, to create Lambda functions, we should say, okay, here we go. Now we want to import the library, which is necessary to import the Lambda class. And to create the object of the class lambda, we should instantiate it. To make it, we are giving it a name. We are saying which type of runtime we would use. So in my case, it's Python 3.11. And then we should tell her what is the code for this lambda we would use. So in my case, I separated the creation of the lambda function itself from the lambda function as a service from the code which will be inside this lambda functions, inside this lambda function. So from my end, it looks like this. So I'm just not specifying the code inside this one. So I'm just saying, okay, if you want to find the code for this lambda function, go to the product service, lambda func, and inside of this one, try to find the file which called product list. And in this file, you should find the function called handler. Let's take a look at this one. So product service, lambda func, and product list inside it. And this is exactly the function which would be ran all the time my lambda function would be triggered. Inside this right now I have the mock data which serves the testing purposes only. So it consists of the list. Inside the list there is a bunch of how is it called in other languages? I guess hash tables. In Python it's just dictionaries, but I think usually it's called hash tables. And inside of these hash tables we have keys like ID, name, and price, and data inside this one. And actually what this function do is just as an input just waiting for some kind of event which would trigger it, and for some kind of context. And as a return, it would return us first of all the status code. So this is, you can think about this one as whenever you are trying to open the page which already doesn't exist, for example. So you always have 404. So which is for page doesn't exist error. And in case of its status code 200, it's just success. So usually if you are succeed to receive this page, so you would get the 200. I also have a few headers which is necessary for our application to work properly from the perspective of this communication between API gateway and lambda functions. And as a body of my response, there would be this mock data, but which one would be JSON, let's say. So I would create from this list, I would create just JSON and give it as a response for the user or for API gateway which called this function. And I think that's it for this lambda function. Yeah, actually we're just saying, okay, go to this folder, go to this file, take this function. So take a look, my function is called handler. So it is what it is. The next function I think would be get product by ID. So what did it do? Actually pretty the same. So from the perspective of the lambda as a service, so when we are looking at it not as a function which should do something, from the service itself, we are just creating it, instantiated it, and saying to it pretty the same data. But in case of pointing to the products list, we are saying, okay, go to the product by ID and find a function named handler. Let's take a look at this one. Actually, it's pretty the same. It also had the mock data. Now it's just saying, okay, in this case, we are not just trying to receive the page, but we are trying to receive the special bunch of data. So we are just trying to find the product by ID. So this is why we are trying to handle the event. And from this event, we are trying to fetch the keys, the first and second. Later on, I will show you how it looks like and how it works. Next, we are trying to go through this list and we are trying to find the specified ID. And in case we can find it, in case we can find this one, so for example, user asked for ID number 4, this variable would have the value as null, so with nothing, just null. And in case user asked for ID number 1, 2, or 3, it would actually return the data which is inside of this ID. So it would be, I guess, ID, name, and product. So we would just return this hash table for the product. And in case we didn't found it, so we would just give this 404 error, and we would say, okay, message the product not found. That would be enough for user to understand. So okay, it looks like there's really nothing, and I should try to find another ID. Okay, and when we have another file which serves us to create the API gateway itself. Actually, it's pretty simple. So we are just creating the API gateway itself, and then we are saying to this API gateway, okay, please take this part of URL as another endpoint for you. So it would be not just the URL of the API gateway, but it would be the URL of API gateway / products. And then we would receive only the get methods, and as the handler to process this request, we would use the Lambda function, and here is the specifying which one. And here is we are adding another one, but in this case it's not just products, but it's products, and to these products we are adding the product ID. So to make it possible to look for specific product ID. And actually, yeah, it looks pretty the same. So now I would show you how it looks like at the UI. And then I just summed this all up in one file and said, okay, create this function, and whenever I create in the API gateway, I should tell this API gateway where it should get the functions, which he should add to as endpoints. So this is why I told him, so there is one function and there's a second one. Yeah, here we are. So the API gateway class, in this case, may create all of the necessary endpoints. And actually that's it. So this is how my code looks like, and yeah, actually that's enough just to say cdk deploy and it would be deployed. Okay, so maybe let's take a look at the questions if you have any. Okay, if it's not, let's move on, and I'll try to show you how it looks like. Okay, first of all, maybe let's talk about what we should do with the front end. So once we deployed this one, once we deployed it with the CDK deploy, all of these resources would be created. So we would have Lambda function, and API gateway. Now what should we do? Now we should go to the API gateway once our resource is up and running. Inside this one, we would have only one option. So we would go to our API gateway, we would go to the stages. Inside the stages, there would be invoke URL. So what does it mean? Actually, it's just the URL of our gateway. So let's take a look from this one. But since we didn't tell this URL any information about what should it do and how should it act, actually, so I think it would just receive to give us nothing. So yeah, authentication token is missing. What does it mean? So there is no endpoints at this end, so we can reach it. But once we would try to So now we should take this URL and place it inside the API paths of our frontend. So I think I have pretty the same. Yeah, it is. So, and actually, if this serve for our application to understand from which endpoint we can reach in our application. Okay, what have I done next? Actually, except the API gateway, we also created. Let's take a look at the endpoints. So as I said, we've created the products endpoint from which we can take the list of the products available for us. And under the products, we also created one more endpoint, which consists only from the product ID. So you can think about it like this way. So here we have an our endpoint. So once we are adding the products inside it, we would have all of the mock data we just created for our function. And whenever we are trying not to run, not to get the list of all of the available products, but the special one, we would ask him, okay, let's say, do you have anyone for number 2? Here we go. In case we are asking something that didn't exist, so for example, number 4, it would say product not found. All the time I'm running these URLs, API gateway looking at the endpoints he have, and he's saying, okay, someone is asking for my URL / products. What should I do? Right now, I should go and trigger the Lambda function, which was specially created to serve these purposes. If you have any questions, please let me know. So actually, it's quite crucial part to understand how all of this works. So please feel free and don't hesitate to ask any questions you have. And now let's take a look on what Lambdas is. Actually, we can just go from the API gateway page right to our Lambda function. So in this case, it's the one which serves the purpose of showing us the list of available products. So this one. And inside of this function, it just consists only from the code, which I like this, which I wrote in here. So this is exactly the code which this Lambda is running all the time, is being invoked. And also, if you, it's kind of advice, if you have something not working from your perspective, so you don't need always to go to your code, change something, and then deploy it to the AWS. You can simply just make all the necessary changes at the here, but don't forget to submit the correct code. So just to copy it from here once it's working, and place it inside your repository. And here is there is also the place where we can test this code. So for example, we may run, okay, let's say my first test from the data. Actually, we don't need any because we want just to have the, okay, like this. Because we want to just retrieve the data when we're saying test. Okay, and here we go. He's saying, okay, it's status code 200, and where is your body? It's in the pretty awkward style right now, because it's because the Python trying to create the string from the list. So this is why all the quotes being marked with a backslash. And now we have another function, which is a bit more interesting from the perspective that it have some kind of logic. So in case we have the particular or necessary ID, it would give us something. In case it's not, it would give us something. This would give us 404. Okay, let me take a look if you have any questions. Okay, looks like still not. To test this function, it's not enough just to run it without any data. So as you can see, okay, my second test. Make it like this. Okay, here we go. So once I run this test, I think it would be an error. Just because this function not only waiting for something to invoke here, but it also trying to process this one. You can see it in here. So we are trying to take event and receive from this event the path parameters and product ID. So to test this kind of function, we should give it kind of data. Okay, like this. And the first key should be path parameters. Could be enough. Like this. And under the key of path parameters, there should be another hash table which consists of product ID. Product ID is a key, and like this, right? Not sure if it looks correct. Okay, but we'll take a look. Okay, and inside of this one, yeah, it's not correct at all, because it should be like this, and under this one we should have the product ID key, and as a value should be, for example, 1. Not sure if it should be string or not. Let's take a look at all the curly brackets. This one is closed. This one is not necessary. So like this, I guess. And when we would try to run it once again, okay, we would get the product which ID is 1. Where can we take a look next? So what should be the definition of done? Let's say would be your CloudFront URL once again. So let's take a look at mine. Let's go to the CloudFront, copy this URL and try to put it right in here. So have a look. Now, whenever my application tries to get any, let's say, products, it's triggering my Lambda function and asking her to, okay, let's go and bring me some products which we have. And what does it do? It just returns all of this data. So you can take a look at this data, and actually it's the same one as we have in here. With only the difference that from this data in our application, which is running on the Node.js, it just transforming this data in these kind of images and this kind of buttons, and returning to the end user exactly this web page. And actually that's it from the task perspective. The only thing left, maybe we also can talk about the extra miles. And I can tell you a few things. Okay, first of all, it's Swagger. So actually, the Swagger is an application, is a utility or a standard, which helps us to understand how API works, and how can we talk to it. Let's take a look at this page been provided. So, and it looks like, yeah, it looks like there's already my example. So actually the Swagger files is written in the YAML format, which stands for yet another markup language or something like this one. So actually it's just a bit more human readable JSON. So you don't need to think about the curly brackets, but as an opposite, you should care about the identations. So it's like a Python identitions. Don't know how to say. So just take a look for the indentions whenever you write in the YAML. And what you can see here, actually, first of all, we are just saying that, okay, we would use the OpenAPI 3.0.0. Actually, it doesn't matter. You can experiment the over ones. We are saying the title for an application, description, blah, 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 the version of this Swagger. And the most important part, we should give it the endpoint of our API gateway. So now we would go back to the API gateway, to the console, to the API gateway. We would copy the API gateway URL and we would insert it right here. Okay. Once again, description. And then we are saying to the Swagger, so, okay, buddy, we have two endpoints. First one is just products, and the second one is product/product ID. When they are explaining, so in case of its status 200, and when we are explaining what kind of data it would, with which kind of data it would respond. So let's take a look at the right part. Actually, the right part is rendering right after you make any changes to this code. So you can just go to this part of this page and click on the try it out, and then click on the execute. And what you would get the response straight from your API. So what does it, why does it, not mandatory, but pretty cool to have whenever you write in your API, because whenever any developer would sit and look at your code, it's much more convenient to do it via the Swagger. So here you can just try everything you want and take a look at the responses it would get as a response. So in this case, we may see that, okay, it would be a list of the hash tables, and now we can work with it. And in case of products, actually that's it. But in case of products/ID, it's a bit different, because as we described in this part, we are saying that, okay, this endpoint may take some parameters as an input. And here we're saying, so, okay, it's required, so it's necessary. Without the parameters, it would not start. And we are saying the type, so to make it rendered in here. So whoever would go to your Swagger page may see. So, okay, it should be string, so I would say just 0, the 1, that would be enough. And as a response, here we're handling two cases. First one, whenever we have this ID in our mock data, or whenever we don't. And if we don't, we would just say, okay, it's 404, and the output would be product doesn't exist. Now let's try to execute it with this one. Okay, and in case we are saying it's 1, we are just given the information about the first the product with the ID 1. And in case we are saying just, okay, let's say it's 5, we are getting this one. We are getting 404, message product not found. So now whenever we need to test or try something within our API, we don't need to go to the console, we don't need to write any kind of code to make sure it's working. We may just go to the Swagger and run any necessary tests, and all of and our fellow colleagues actually would be happy about this. That's it about Swagger. And actually, once you are done, so you may save this Swagger inside of your repository. So in my case, it looks like this. So just in the root folder, I have this one. If you want, you may just copy this one, paste it to the Swagger, and you may test it. Okay, next part. Okay, let's omit this one for a second. Let's take something a bit easier. So Lambda handlers code is written not in one single module, but separated in the code base. So this is what I've done. Inside the product service, I have three of these resources, three files, each one for each resource, and one which sums this all up, and that's it. And also the code in the separate folder. And okay, once we are already talking about the code, so this is what is required for this point number 3. And actually, let me call Pavel. Let me add the Pavel to us. So in case he have any comments from the Node.js perspective, maybe it would look a bit different for you. So Pavel, if you have any comments about the uh, repository, so go ahead.
Yes, right. Hello, everyone. I think Anton already explained everything from the side of Python developers. I can see some questions. Olga is asking about the user configuration. If I get it right, you're asking about the user configuration like we did the last time for CDK for AWS.
Mhm.
If this is the question exactly what I said, so you don't need to make another user configuration for the backend because everything is already saved on your machine, and you will be working exactly with the same AWS account. Anton, can you share my screen, please?
Yep, sure. Uh, Here we go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Um, does it work?
Yep, looks good.
Right. Okay. Um, what I would tell you that when you were doing the front end part in task 2, you were doing this AWS configure, right, and everything, and you already have all these settings for your user, so you don't need to set up again. You will be working from that side. Also, what I wanted to show you, because today we had some questions about it, I would like to show you how to do this first part, which says, let me just briefly jump in the beginning. You have two repositories, one for front end, one for back end. I will shortly describe and explain how it should work. So for the front end, you already have repository, and you don't need to do this task 3 serverless API in that repository. You need to create a new one. So when you create a new one, you have like a branch called main, right? From there, you make another branch which is called task2, and you do all your commits in there. Here, for example, here you commit, push, commit, push. When you're done, you open, because many people are confused in this. You make a pull request to the main, but you don't merge it. You don't have to merge it. Just leave it like it is. If you actually want to merge and just keep all your development on one branch, from main you can make another branch like development, and everything can be merged there. So if you do like task 4, task 5, you can make pull requests and merge it later. So please remember, you need to keep your pull requests open while cross check cross check is going while the cross check is running. Also, for the people who were doing task 2 inside not their personal not inside their personal repository, but they were using school repository. Well, unfortunately, those scores won't be counted. So you should do all the work inside your personal repository, and all these repositories should be public. Okay, so briefly, as I said, right? Briefly. These two repositories for backend and for the front end, they are not connected at all. This is only the backend development, and this is only the front end development. You don't connect them between. All your development is associated inside AWS. So the front end is associated with CloudFront, and the backend goes to API gateway, right? So if we just jump in this schema, as Anton told you, so we are working only with this little part, two lambda function, and one Amazon gateway, which are created inside AWS CDK, and before this DynamoDB or whatever we will be using in next task, you make the mock file and place the mock file inside your Lambda functions. I mean, nearby. If you work with modules, meaning like, let me show you. Sure, here.
I would just jump in for a moment. So actually, there's nothing bad about merging the branches, and especially if you would further, you would work with your backend branch, you would make the changes. So actually, you can merge your branch with the main one, and it's not a bad idea to merge the work you've already done. So you're just committing it, merging it to the main, and whenever you are done, so you can make another branch from your main branch, do all your job, all the necessary, create all the necessary functions, all the necessary resources, and then create one more pull request. And even if you are merging, actually your pull request is already open. So why are we committing the pull request as a definition of done? That's because it's most convenient way to check for any changes were made. So if you merged something in your main, so for example, for the fourth task, make another branch from your main and do all your job, and then create a pull request to the main one once again.
Yeah, but Anton, if they make a merge from development branch into the main, so the pull request will be closed. Keep your pull request.
But
keep your pull
but you
request.
still can open. But you still can open the pull request, this web page, and you can take a look at the changes that were made.
Right. Okay. Let me proceed. And
Okay, go ahead.
about this, about the front end side. First, you need, as Anton said, go to this file which is in queries in the folder of SRC queries, and change this process as it shows on an example. Right. Then it will work. Then you do your backend part. So you create new repository, you create a project folder in there, you go inside, and then you init the CDK. It will be configured for you with everything. Then like this, the structure will be like that, right? So then you create a new Lambda function folder, and you create two Lambda functions, right? Well, I have a lot of files in there because it was already done, but you write your code in each file TypeScript, right? And place your products mock file with like simple object inside there, uh, nearby the Lambda functions. Okay, so I won't show you any further codes, but what else you should remember? Yeah, you write the service stack, the stack inside the file, inside the lib, and you will need to write tests. Tests are like optional, I think. Let me see. Let me check. Other tests are optional.
Tests
Or
are optional. Yep.
they're optional, right? Okay. Anyways, if you have a time to write a test, so please do so. The tests are not so hard to write. Also, you can create this Open API file YAML here and place it inside your project folder and keep it here. So the user who comes, well, actually, I don't think that VS Code is able to open it, but WebStorm opens it just exactly like it was on this website on Swagger. So inside your IDE, you can open this YAML file, and it will show you how it works with the buttons like um, get products, get product by ID, and everything will work. Inside, you also place this gateway address, and as soon as you have this address, as Anton showed you on the AWS website, you also need to go to the front end and place this link inside constants for products only. If you are concerned about this last prod, this is not products. Prod is like production. So you keep the whole address as it is. Don't like delete this prod at the end, because after that endpoints like products, orders, and everything will be added after the prod. So this is your gateway address, right? And what else is important? Yes, when you're done with your front end, I mean, you completed the back end, and you are changing this as it shows the example, and you're doing on the front end. When you complete, you can make git add, git commit, git push on your front end part in that repository, like here, right? And then don't forget to make build and make deploy, CDK deploy, npm run build and CDK deploy. After that, all these changes will come to your CloudFront. Via CloudFront, they will come to S3 bucket. And your final application, I'm sorry, and your final application should show you the result. This is very important, with all your products, mock products which you created. After that, when you are filling up the pull request, many people are asking what we should write inside there, how we can fill it. Well, there are different ways, but actually you need to explain what you have done, which is done, and that you want these score points to be added to your like work, right? So if you've done this point, and that point and that point, so you get the points. If both are done, so you get 70 points. If you do the additional tasks and something is not completed, like this, right? So if something is not completed, so you can mark it somehow. But this is only for the reviewer one, who will come to your pull request and will see that here is a task link. Okay, it was working from the student who placed this pull request for a cross check. Here is a CloudFront link. Okay, let me see if it works. Yeah, it works, right? So you can go to products, open the products, manage it, I mean, you're not able to manage it because CRUD is not completed, but it works. Okay, so you get 70 points. Also, my suggestions for reviewers is to go through every point, and if it says check if get product list and get product by ID list Lambda functions are created, you just open it and see if there is a folder with Lambda functions. You open it. I mean, not here, but I wanted to show you. I'm sorry. Not here. Over here, right? You just go to the code of this pull request, and you will see on task 3 branch all the code. Open the folder of the project, and here are the functions. So you can check which function is here, right? Then what do? You can check if the gateway is written right and everything works good. Then you can, as an optional one, you can check the tests. You can run those tests. It's simple, right? And this is pretty much it. I would say you can cover all of this. You can check for product not found. Just simply add the wrong number of the wrong ID, and you will get the product is not found, right? Something like that. So back to Anton.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So yeah, let me add maybe 2 more points which you already told about, but actually, so about unit tests, actually, since we are not Q&A engineers, so maybe it's not that crucial to have all of them. So don't spend too much on it. So just create kind of simple tests, which you can see I created in here. So actually, 2 tests. What does it do? So when we are providing with the correct ID, it's saying, okay, status code is 200. And when we are checking if the product contains product ID, product 1 and correct price. How are we doing it? We are just importing the function which we've created. Here it is. Yep. And what are we doing? We are just calling this function like this. So here it is. And then we are providing one event. So event contains from the path parameter and product ID. And in case there is the product ID which doesn't exist, we are just saying 404. Once we are running the test, so it's saying, okay, test is passed because all the assertions are done. And for the last part of this task, so product not found, so what does it mean? Whenever we are going to the function, once again, product by ID, if we don't have the specialized ID, so we should just send this 404 error and say, okay, product not found.
Right. Anton, I think this was pretty long introduction to the task number, whatever.
It is.
Task number 3, right?
3.
So if you have any questions, you can ask now, or we can move back to Discord and shut this stream. Should we show you something if you were
maybe
not familiar
one more
with-
point about the pricings, because we've had so many questions about from where all of these not invocations, but requests to our S3 buckets were created. So every time you're doing something with your Lambda functions or actually with your SDK, all of this data has been stored inside the S3 bucket, which were created especially for the purpose to serve the consistency of CDK. So I won't say that it's all of these requests, so a bunch of them may be from any kind of sniffers or any kind of hackers or something like this who is trying to find any data. But still, I think since you have so many this requests to your bucket as a free tier, so you should not worry about it. And for now, it's quite okay.
Yeah, right.
And
So
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, any questions? I think how many people do we have here? Like 17 or something watching us. Uh, guys, so if it is clear, just plus like type plus if you don't have any questions. If you do, please free to ask.
Yeah, and don't forget that we are community, so we are happy to help you. And whenever you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the Discord anytime, whenever you want, and
Right.
whatever you want.
Plus. I can see pluses. So not many questions. Then in this case, we will see you in Discord if you have one. Any.
Yeah,
Right.
next week I will try to run this lecture a bit earlier, but I'm just tight in time a bit now on
And
the
shorter.
project, so yeah, and shorter, sure.
Right.
So thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for being here and for your questions. I still remember this one we have in here. So yeah, all the time you can reach me in the Discord if you have any concerns or questions.
Yes, this short lecture will be saved on YouTube channel, so you can return back and scroll through to see what you have missed.
Yep. So thank you so much and
Thank
see
you
you
very
soon.
much.
Have a nice rest of the day.